We're going to discuss oil coolers today. Over the years, I've used a lot of oil coolers. I've installed a lot of them, used them in racing, used them on the street. Some people, used to be a lot of people, you'd hear the phrase oil coolers. You go, oh, them things don't work. Yeah, there's no use arguing with somebody that's going to say they don't work. Because typically you automatically think they don't know what the hell they're talking about. At least I do. So oil cooler just convection, just like a radiator. Fluid goes in, air outside cools it off. It's pretty simple. That being said, if you live in a place where it's always 20, 30, 40 degrees outside Fahrenheit, no, you probably don't need one. However, if you ride your bike, like ride the shit out of it, like I do, or like some other people do, and you get stuck in traffic places, especially in traffic, it works. If you're out on a hot day, it doesn't even have to be that hot. Just say 80, 90 degrees, 95 degrees, whatever. They are going to cool oil off some. The bigger oil cooler, this one's pretty small, but that's what I have. This is a Honda oil cooler off of a older CB900F Super Sport that I happen to be dismantling, and it's only a 5-row cooler, but better than nothing. So I'll be sticking this on the bike once I'm waiting on some plumbing pieces here, because it's not a direct bolt in. I have to make a couple of have to do some plumbing on it, we'll just say. But over the years, especially I road raced for years and always had heat problem, like you would, because you're running, or I was running high compression and beating the hell out of the motor. I mean, beating the crap out of it, shift when the oil light comes on kind of thing. Without an oil cooler, it would run, oil temperature would be, 230, 240, 250, in that range. That's hot. I grabbed an oil cooler I had laying around, which happened to be off of, it was a transmission oil cooler, so it was quite a bit bigger than a standard motorcycle oil cooler, and stuck it on the bike, and I got the temperature back down to around 200. Perfect. If you drop 30, 40, 50 degrees, that's an oil temperature. That's pretty damn good. And correspondingly, it dropped my cylinder head temperature too. I can tell that because I used to use these sticky tapes. They're still available. You stick them on, and be surprised what you put them on. You stick one on the primary. The only place I ever put them was on the cylinder heads, right around the spark plugs, so I could see what my cylinder head temperatures were. If any changes I made could drop the cylinder head temperatures. That oil cooler dropped it a lot. That being said, they do have covers, or you can make a cover for an oil cooler. So, you want to go riding, it's 35 degrees outside. You probably don't need the oil cooler on there, but you're not going to take it off. You can make yourself a nice little cover out of leatherette or leather or whatever. That, sew it up, put it on there, Velcro cover on. Works good. Still going to cool the oil just because it's out in the air. Ambient temperature, is going to cool it. But big fan of oil coolers. Unless you live someplace, like I said, where it's 30 degrees outside, then you should probably be running 10W40 on your bike instead of 2050. We won't get into oils though on this. We're just talking about oil coolers. I had a customer one time with some computer guy, old timer computer guy, and been working on his bike for years, put an oil cooler on there, or he had put an oil cooler on there, and his bike would still run hot, or he complained about it running hot. I'm like, what's your oil temperature? 190. I guess that was too hot for him. Went through the rigmarole of, well, it needs to be a certain temperature to burn any moisture out of it, condensation out of the oil. And he's like, yeah. So he comes in next time and he wants to show me the contraption he came up with. What he'd done was take a couple of some kind of computer fans that are, they're like this big. And he had two of them mounted behind the oil cooler. And explained to me how he did it. He had it hooked up to a thermostat, so if his oil temperature, he made the thermostat, so if the oil temperature at a certain level, the fans would automatically kick on. Sounded neat and it worked. And shortly after that, they came out with oil cooler thermostats. So you can put a thermostat on there. I'm not putting one on my bike because I'm cheap. If I had money laying around, I wouldn't be using the perfectly good used oil cooler on there. I'd be buying one with thermostat, but that's really neither here nor there. Anyway, that's about it for the oil coolers. Also, too, I will say on Softails, the way the Harley oil tank is, the Softail oil tank, the oil return line is directly over top of the feed line. So any hot oil you get in the tank is getting automatically, doesn't direct it to one side. Hold on, let me show you here what I'm talking about. So what would happen is, this one isn't like a stock one because the oil feed line right here, that's the return line right there. On a Harley oil tank, this isn't Harley, this is aftermarket, but on a Harley oil tank, the feed line, the return line is directly over top of the feed line. I mean, directly over top of it. We can pull the cap out and watch the hot oil coming out of the tube, squirting right over that. So what we used to do on Softails that were running hot continuously is we'd take and put the return line over here on the back of the oil tank, like right down here. Just drilling it, take the oil tank out and drill it, and weld the fitting in there, and then run the return line to this side of the tank. So it at least gave the oil a little bit of a chance to cool off. It does circulate in here somewhat, but just by moving the return line over to this side of the tank, you could drop it from 210 to 190 in that range fairly easy, or 240 to 220. You drop it a good 20 degrees just by rerouting the oil lines. Which, air-cooled motor, that's all you got. And trust me, you get stuck out in traffic somewhere. You're going to Ocean City on Memorial Day weekend or whatever, and you're sitting in traffic for hours. You're basically cooking, and your oil gets so thin that your bike starts smoking a little bit. Lifters start tippy tapping, because oil's too thin, because it's hot. Anything outside the motor to help cool it off. If you're pulling oil out of it, you're rerouting oil from hot metal surfaces out into ambient air. It's going to drop temperature before it goes back to the tank. So your return line, your oil cooler is going to go on the return side of the oil pump. You're not going to cool the feed oil back through the oil pump. So you're basically taking hot oil out of the engine, feeding it through an oil cooler to cool it a little bit before it goes back to the tank. I've heard some crazy excuses why oil coolers are bad. A couple of them provides a restriction in the return line, and the motor's going to load up with oil. I've heard that one. I've tested it. It's not true. Yeah, that's my little talk on oil coolers. That's how I feel about them. I use them. I continue to use them. I can continue to recommend them. If you tear enough engines apart, ones that use oil coolers versus ones that don't, because everything needs maintenance after a while, needs engine work after a while, and you can pull apart an engine with that's had an oil cooler or has an oil cooler and had one on there for a long time, versus one that hadn't, and you look up underneath the pistons. And under the crown of the pistons, On some bikes, that oil's cooked. It's flaking off carbon where it's been so hot up under the crown of the piston that versus one that has an oil cooler on it. And it's not true of all bikes, but majority of them they're cleaner, where things haven't gotten as hot. But that's about it. It's raining like crazy. It's been raining since last night. Quit this morning and started raining again. Anyway, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Appreciate all of you. Take care.